Hello, and welcome to an intro to Anthro with two humans. I'm human number one, John McCray.
And I'm human number two, John Lehr.
And this is the podcast where we reassess what it means to be human. And the title of this episode is Football Fans and Football Fools, the Divine Madness of Sports Fandom. So I'm sure you're very excited about this one, John.
I absolutely am. I mean, I'm an avid football fan. I think it comes from my dad, but my family is, none of them are, and they just think I'm totally insane.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the way it is. If you're the only football fan in the house, that's usually how it is.
Mary seems pretty supportive of your addiction to football.
That's a
flashback to our last episode.
Yeah. She is supportive. What's kind of interesting is
she is supportive.
Well, it's first of all, I just want to say this is I want to say thank you to one of our listeners, Jamie.
Yes.
Who had sent in to us and had said, we always ask, like, if you have a topic that you feel like humanity needs to know about or a question. And she had sent in, and people are kind of taking your cue on this, John. It was just like, what about man caves and everything sports? So I just got to say that. Which is a great topic. I want to get back to man caves because I think man caves is a great topic.
I do too.
I was already working on something. I had working on just football. But then when Jamie mentioned sports, I was like, okay, it's perfect.
Yes.
So we will try to add a little bit to just sports in general to this one.
Yeah.
And then Jamie, just know that we'll come back to man caves. But again, if anybody has a topic, send them in because
we are responsive to our audience. Yes.
Now, to say that, I mean, about man caves and about Mary, the reason why I wanted to get to that was, Mary is a Lehr fan. And Mary
yes, I know.
She has sharescholar.com, which is the website.
Highly recommend.
Yes. She also has a blog. She writes articles about popular culture with through the lens of Lehr, but it's actually talking about music and popular culture.
It's so brilliantly done. It really is.
It has a sense of humor, but also very erudite as well, I guess I would say.
And fan faithful. Yeah. She's not making fun. She is a legit fan, but she just jumps off from there to all of these incredible angles.
Right. And I'm not sure, when you were out here last, she hadn't created the Lehr Shed yet.
Oh, yes. It was. It was. I mean, it may have come further, but it was fully on in my.
Yeah.
I mean, she has a she shack, but it's all Lehr. It's a Lehr shack.
It's a shed in our backyard that is like a legitimate shed. At one time, they used to make beer in there. Like the former owners, they did stained glass out there or glass blowing. And now it's full of Lehr memorabilia. It's like if you saw it, you would think, McCray's got all of his tools out there. No, it is full on Lehr, Lehr, like a museum.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. It's presented like a museum. It's not just boxes of stuff. It's all, it's for the viewer. It's built for the fan.
And when we moved here and she was putting together the Lehr Shed, I was actually taking a graduate level course in museum administration over at UNM. And so one of my projects was you had to come up with a collections plan for a collection. So I did it for the Lehr Shed. So the Lehr Shed actually is run like a legitimate museum out there.
That's fantastic. You can see that. I did not know that, but I can see your hand in it. Now, let me ask you something. When you guys saw the house, how quickly was the shack taken for? How quickly was it assigned to Lehr?
It was assigned pretty quickly when we moved in.
Yeah, how did it happen? Do you remember? How did it go down?
Well, I was kind of for it because she had everything in our garage boxed
Mm-hmm.
up. And she has an
Mm-hmm.
extensive collection because she's been collecting
Yes.
since she was like 5 years old.
Yeah.
And it was just a shame to see all of that boxed up. It's like you
Yeah.
have to get it out. You have to get it out.
Yeah.
And honestly, one of my I don't have any hobbies except this show, which I didn't have at that time.
Right. You're
But
not
anyway,
a glass blower. You're sober. You're not going to brew any beer. You're
Yeah,
not a
it's-
handyman per se. I mean, you're not bad, but it's not like
Yeah.
you enjoy woodworking or anything.
Oh yeah, I'll be honest about it. Like I'm an awful handyman. Awful handyman. I'm just like at a certain point, I'm just like screw it. I'll just pay somebody to come out and do it. So
yeah, it takes patience for sure.
But anyway, so it was a perfect fit. It's a large shed.
Yeah, it
out in our
is.
backyard. But I tell you, when I had to have an electrician come out and rewire a light in there for us not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as I was walking out there with him, it suddenly dawned on me what was full of it.
You were like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, and I had to say to him, he was like an older guy. I'm like, do you like Cher? he's like, what? I go, do you like Cher? And he goes, the singer? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I like her.
Yeah,
I go,
who doesn't like Cher?
Well, get ready for this. So anyway, so yeah, Mary. I mean, it just kind of it's that fandom. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I know that she always says to me, like when we're watching the Chiefs or watching a football game, and I get fully into like I'm screaming. It's all part of the catharsis. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we're not Chiefs fans who have just jumped on the bandwagon. We both born and raised. We're in our 50s. We neither of us remember Super Bowl IV, which was the last one we won.
Yeah.
But our families did. And we grew up, and the Chiefs were just for a long time they were terrible.
Yeah.
And then they became heartbreakers where they were like good but would never, get past. So it's been a long haul as a Chiefs fan.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. I remember times in the late 70s, early 80s, you couldn't give Chiefs tickets away.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, that's how bad they were. People would say,
my dad
hey,
used to he would watch every game and just get so fucking pissed. Just screaming and
Yeah. And it was again, you go to the state, like now the stadium's packed. You would go to the stadium, there would be hardly anybody in there. Like, like I remember a game where you could hear the players talking on the sideline, like not screaming, not yelling. They were just talking. You were hearing them just talk about like a normal conversation. That's how quiet the stadium was.
Brutal, and brutally. It's an outdoor stadium, so it's really cold and miserable in the winter. So you got to be a fan.
Right. And so Mary, when I'm watching it, I'm so upset. She always says to me, it doesn't look like it's very much fun being a Chiefs fan. Like, why do you do it? Why do you do it? And to me, that's what's so crazy is like, you have a shed full of Cher memorabilia. Yeah. You're asking me, why do I do it?
But she doesn't get pissed at her Cher memorabilia and throw it around. She enjoys it. She gets pleasure from it. Whereas we're tortured by it.
Right. And I think maybe I think all sports fans are tortured by their love affair of their team, no matter how good their team is. I think there's something that just, it's so emotional and
yes. There are games that I can't watch. I just can't do it. I have to, but I shouldn't. I should not watch them.
Yeah. And there's still, like, I'll go back to my happy place. Like, I'll watch the last 6 minutes of that first Super Bowl that they won a couple of years ago. If I'm feeling down,
I watched on YouTube the one when we won in 1971. It's on YouTube. I watched the whole game.
Yeah, you still get happy. You still get happy.
It made me so happy.
Now, before we go any further, I have to say, you and I have been to a Super Bowl together.
Damn right we have.
Do you want to tell us a little bit?
Well, as some listeners may know, I was the original Geico caveman from the Geico caveman commercials. And I did Super Bowl commercials every year with Phil Simms. I did this for like 3 or 4 years, I think. And one year I did it with him, and the ad was about the caveman trying to get free tickets from Phil to the Super Bowl. Like that's the setup, and Phil's like trying to, brush me off. And we're shooting the ad, and then we get to, they cut, and Phil says, "Hey, would you like some Super Bowl tickets?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute, is he improvising?
Yeah,
like, is he playing with me? Like, what's going on here?" And I was like,
running lines or something.
Yeah. And finally I said yes. And he sent us, we were on the 50-yard line. We were up high where you kind of want to be, because they were great tickets, I thought.
Yeah.
He gave us hotel rooms where all the players were. It was unbelievable. It was like the two of us have never been so happy.
I know, he was the nicest guy. Like, we had to go like meet him to get the tickets. Remember?
Yes,
he had the tickets.
Yeah, he was at the hotel in a conference room studying tapes for the Super Bowl. And
huge,
he was like,
huge guy,
huge man. They all are.
Yeah.
And he didn't know me. He'd never met me, because he'd only met me with the makeup on. He goes, "Are you the guy?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then Solomon, what's his name?
Solomon Wilcots or whatever.
Yeah, he
came
was
over.
there, right? Yeah. And he was like, "Oh my God, you're the kid!" Like, they were fanboying on me.
It was so great. It was so great to watch.
Everybody in the hotel were football players.
Yeah.
Like, we were in the center of it all. Do you remember? We saw everywhere we looked was a famous football player.
Yeah.
God, that was great.
Chris Collinsworth. Remember, like, Phil Simms introduced you to Chris Collinsworth. He was like, you're funny stuff.
You're the caveman. I met Chris Collinsworth. God, he was huge. They're all enormous people.
I know.
Just enormous.
I have a couple of stories to tell. That before we went to that, for my work, and I can't say what I do, but for my work, I had gone back to testify in front of Congress that week, a few days before. And I remember after I testified, they were like, some people there in Congress were like, "Hey, do you want to hang out and meet some politicians and some people?" And just say, and I was like, "No, I got to get out of here. I'm going to the Super Bowl with my best friend, the Geico caveman, as a guest of Phil Simms." And I sounded like
a crazy person.
A lunatic. And they just they just looked at me like, who the hell is this? This nutball we just let testify in front of Congress?
What did you just say? I know, we were like little schoolboys the whole. We were just. It was amazing. We got up super early. We watched TV. We went to the pregame. There's a whole carnival that goes on around the Super Bowl. You can go in and see the trophy, and you can see all the rings. And we rode. Did we ride on some rides? I think we did.
we went on that, like, the Scrambler or whatever, or something up in this. I have a photo of us, like, on the carnival rides before.
Oh God, you've got to post that. God, that was amazing.
That was, and I still thank you so much for taking me.
Thank
with that.
you.
Really.
That was so satisfying on every level.
but remember, it was one of those things when we got there. Remember, he wasn't at the hotel yet, or he was busy or something,
and we were just like, "Oh shit, is this all bullshit?"
He really was joking,
Yeah, we didn't know for sure till we had those tickets in hand.
Yeah. But I always, everybody, whenever, you get a bunch of football people, they're always like, "Who's the GOAT? Who's the greatest of all time quarterbacks?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they'll always go on about Tom Brady.
Yeah.
He's the GOAT. And I always have to, Phil Simms. Phil Simms, he's the greatest of all time. the
Yes,
greatest
you're
of all
right.
time.
You're right. The
Yeah,
greatest of
I
all
don't care.
time.
Brady never
Yeah.
gave us Super Bowl
No,
tickets.
never gave us nothing. He just gave us a lot of losses.
Yeah. uh, so, John, you've mentioned it already about how the Chiefs were, for a long time, were horrible. Like 50
Horrible.
years, they were horrible.
Yeah. They went 50
And
years without winning a Super Bowl, one of the
right,
longest streaks in sports.
yeah.
You know, and yeah, and then they went.
And did you find it when you follow a team that's a perennial loser?
Yes.
I think it begins to have an effect on how you define yourself as
Yes.
well.
I totally agree. I took great pride in the fact that I was a fan of my team no matter what. And
Right.
as they continued to lose over the decades, it became kind of a blanket of sort, like it was comfortable. I knew, I mean, I
Yeah.
would still get
Yeah.
upset and I would still have high hopes every season like an
Yeah.
idiot.
Yeah.
But there was something about it and I took great pride in it. And I told my kids that I you know, that, hey, you can't just jump on a bandwagon. You got to,
Right.
stick
Right.
with your team. And then when they won, it really was kind of a crisis for me,
Yeah.
emotionally and spiritually,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
now I was one of the assholes that won. You know what I mean? Like it was
Yeah.
like, what? Wait, now I don't have that anymore. I'm not the guy who followed. You know what I mean? It was kind of a crisis moment for me.
Yeah. I would say there was cognitive dissonance after they won the Super Bowl because
Yeah.
I had built my whole personality was like the Chiefs of
Yes.
like lovable losers. They'll try, but they'll never make it. But hey,
Right.
they'll be back next year, always
Yep.
trying.
Yep.
And then it was like once they won, it's like I could no longer say that. It was
Right.
really hard. I think I'm still dealing with it
Yes.
right now.
I think we're both kind of in a state of shock these past few
Yeah.
years. These, 5 years, 4 years since
Yeah.
they've been good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're both kind of in a state of shock. We keep waiting for the other shoe to drop or something, and it's not. I
Yeah.
mean, they're a machine. They're a juggernaut. They no. We have the best player in the league on the
Yeah.
Chiefs. It's so
Yeah.
bizarre.
It's so strange. And I will, for 50 years I said, Lord, my prayer would be, Lord, just give me one Super Bowl. That's all I want. And winning is like drugs. Once you get one Super Bowl, that's all you ever want. It's got to be
Yeah.
another Super Bowl.
Oh, it's almost, if they don't get it, then it's like a losing season.
Yeah,
It ruins it all. But I'll tell you, when I center myself, there is a part of me that's like, you know what? If they don't win, I'm okay. We got that one. Like, if I can center myself and like think about it, I'll be like, okay.
Yeah.
But if I'm watching the game, that one they won last. Oh Jesus, the one they won last season. There was a little girl in the room where we were all watching it. She's like, not a little girl, but she's like 14.
Yeah.
And she was saying stuff like, well, John, it doesn't look so good for you because the Chiefs were down.
Yeah.
It doesn't look so good for your Chiefs. And then when the Chiefs started coming back, I was literally standing, pointing at her, going, oh yeah? Oh yeah? And she's just looking at me like, what?
Yeah.
I was in a group of people. None of them were football fans. So they were all watching. They thought it was, you would talk and eat food. And I'm jumping up and I'm a crazy person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is a benefit to like, first of all, you don't want to, if you're a sports fan, you don't want to be with a bunch of people who aren't sports fans.
You don't want to be with anybody. I don't want to be with anybody. I don't want my family around. I don't want anybody.
Yeah. It's kind of like if you're a Star Trek fan, don't watch Star Trek with people who aren't fans because they won't. They'll be making jokes and talking.
Yeah, exactly. And
Look
Super
at the
Bowl
ears
parties. No, Super Bowl parties suck.
Yeah.
Because the volume's always on full. You still can't understand it. Everybody's talking.
Yeah.
It sucks. I hate Super Bowl parties.
Yeah. And half the people, it's not their team. You know what I mean?
You're
It's like,
right.
oh, my team's there. I'm just watching the commercials or something. And it's
There
like,
was a period where I watched this. Yeah, exactly. Or the halftime show.
yeah. Yeah.
There was a period when I watched the Super Bowl with Jennifer's grandfather, who at that point
Yeah.
was in his late 80s, early 90s. And it was wonderful. Nobody
Yeah.
said a word. It was fantastic.
Just quiet.
Quiet. I would go down to the seniors. I would go down to the senior center, and they had like a little TV room, and it'd be just me and him. It was fantastic.
So anyway, John, so that gives us a little background of how much we love sports.
Yeah.
And so I think now we could move into like why? Why is it that people love sports and go crazy about sports?
Yeah.
And in his book, The Meaning of Sports, Michael Mandelbaum makes the point that for those who do not share the love of sports, the obsession can seem sinister. He quotes Fran Lebowitz, and apparently Fran Lebowitz once said, "What is truly chilling is that there are a lot of smart people interested in sports. That just gives you no hope for the human race."
That is so well said.
Yeah, yeah. But I think you could say that about any obsession that you don't share. That you don't share.
But there's a savageness, a competition, a stone cold must win kind of thing with sports that I think taps into the darkest parts of what it means to be a human.
Right.
You know?
Maybe, like somebody who collects like, vintage purses or something. They're right out there like wanting to get in fights or something.
Yeah, I mean, you go to soccer games and people are killing each other. There's hooligans, hoodlums.
Right. So Mandelbaum, he has written a great book. That book is like The Meaning of Sports. He really goes in depth about why people are into sports. But what he says is that the idea of playing team sports for fun is a relatively recent concept.
Really?
And that's really only going back to like the 19th century.
Really? But I thought the Aztecs had a game where that was like rollerball where they threw it through a stone circle or something.
I mean,
but maybe
maybe
that wasn't a team sport. Maybe it was just individuals trying to do it.
I think it was a team sport, but I think he's talking about like in like a big worldwide
phenomenon.
Phenomenon. Yeah. Because if you think about like the Greek and Roman games were almost always like an individual was competing against another individual.
Yes, true.
And in the book, The Anthropology of Sport, Niko, Besnier, Susan Brownell, and Thomas Carter state that the concept of sport, meaning an athletic competition with a clear winner at the end, was invented in Britain in the mid-19th century.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, you had like you talk about the Aztec game or the Mayan game.
Yeah.
But we're talking about how we see it with the rules and everything.
Right.
Yeah. And the reason Mandelbaum says that that's why sports didn't come about until the 19th century is that prior to that time, and we've mentioned it before on the show, kids usually, once you were old enough to kind of function on your own, you went to work.
Yeah.
You went to work in the factory.
Yeah, you did.
And it wasn't until like the mid-19th century that there was a time kind of set aside. Adolescence is what we know it now, but there became a time where kids, before you went off to work, you had a few years in there where you were supposed to go to school
and recreate.
Just be a kid,
Interesting.
And it was because that was a time of going to schools that these sports they would play the team sports at schools. And so that's how sports became associated with schools.
Interesting. They were just trying to come up with activities that engaged a lot of kids, probably.
Right, exactly. And it was interesting. And there was the other thing, they thought that that sports would teach the skills that were needed to later lead the nation, for example, like in the private school, like Eton, for example, in England. They thought that you would have sports like soccer or rugby that was teaching kind of the the traits that you wanted in your future leaders of the country.
Okay.
And then also what Mandelbaum says is that the Industrial Revolution also assisted team sports by bringing a lot of people to the cities. And when you brought a lot of people to the cities for jobs, then you had a lot of people that, first of all, that you could recruit your team from,
right.
But also you had a lot of people who wanted to do something on their one day off, which was go out and watch sports.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And we're talking like cricket was probably an early, and soccer, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Soccer probably was the earliest.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like a ball games where people are just trying to like kick a ball around. Usually like the historic soccer, I think, was in towns, like through the town, and everybody would just be like two sides would be trying to grab the ball and take it, to the other side. So very violent, a lot of fighting. But from that, it evolved into soccer and then rugby and then football. For us.
Incredibly violent.
Yeah. And another thing Mandelbaum says is that sports appeal to human needs that were previously addressed only by religion.
I thought you were gonna say war. Like the lack of war. It tapped into that. Like football is like basically war. You're taking ground. And and the pieces or chess, I guess it's like a little like chess, because the different players can do different things, have certain rules, but the idea is to gain more ground, yardage.
And I guess I was reading a history of football itself, and there was a conscious effort for football, the rules, everything, to make it all about tactical decisions or strategy. Whereas the like kind of almost like take out chance, like you wanted, like there's still some chance involved, but it wants to be a skill, almost like chess, like you were saying, where everybody is so skilled that they know what they're doing, and it's all about how the two generals, the field generals, are competing against each other.
Yes.
But one of the things that Mandelbaum says, he goes, sports and organized religion share several important features. Both address the needs of the spirit and the psyche rather than those of the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
Neither bears directly on what is necessary for physical survival, such as food and shelter. So it's like, it's not keeping us alive watching these games.
Mm-hmm.
And both stand outside the working world. So in other words, just like with religion, we watch the game. It's giving us something spiritually.
Yes. No question. If you've ever seen a game at Wrigley Field, you know what you feel that. And I assume that where Green Bay plays Lambeau, thank you, where they play. And the Chiefs Stadium is like that, because it's the same stadium for years and years and years.
Yeah. And I think Buffalo Stadium too, you can see it when you're watching there. Like it's something that it's very reverential. You're going, it's spirituality to it, that you're sharing this with everybody.
Yeah, it's a very communal experience.
Right. And he says the other thing is the drama involved, and how sports are basically dramas.
Yes.
And how in the Middle Ages you used to go to the Globe Theater, or ancient Egypt or ancient Greece, you would go see a drama at the theater. Now we go, or we watch sports, or we go to the sports arena for kind of that communal drama that we could feel with other people.
Yes, and it somehow feels more real because there's no script per se. There's no, it's happening before. Yeah. I always say to people who don't get football, and I'm like, it's all it is the world's most complicated reality show. I mean, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
In survival, they have all these activities they have to do. In Survivor, they have all these activities. It's the same thing. It's right. The game itself is just a component of it all.
Yeah, and he describes it like as in a drama, you have like a hero,
Yeah.
and they always try to build it up when you're watching, but you feel it even if you go see a game
Yeah.
live and you can't hear the announcers all do it, or the television when they televise it. You
Right.
have the hero, you have the villain,
Yes.
and there's certain things that, just like in a drama, like the heroes have to overcome something
Yes.
to win the
Yes.
prize, or to
Yes.
get to the end of it, whether it be through the
Yes.
season or through the game.
Yeah.
And these are
Absolutely. The hero's journey, it's yeah.
And it's all, again, it's all things that are part of drama. And he even talks about how team sport, it's interesting that team sports became popular, or started in like the 1840s with soccer and rugby in England.
Interesting.
And that's also the time that the detective novel came around. And he's saying it's just like with the detective novel, sports kind of gives you that tension, or like you don't know who's going to win. But yet, but like in the detective,
who done it?
Right. But in a detective novel, the setup is always the same. Like you know the detective, there's a murder that starts out in the beginning. It's in an old house. There's lots of suspects.
Yes.
You don't know how it's going to end, but you immediately
there are lots
know
of tropes, lots of handles, lots of things that you're familiar with.
Right.
Huh. That's really interesting.
And that's kind of what he says is like, that's what a sports game, because you could be watching a football game anywhere. And if you know the rules already, you kind of already got it. Like when it starts, you know what everybody's doing or what the purpose of what they're doing is.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
You could just sit back and enjoy the drama, the ebb and flow of the game, and the tension of not knowing how is this going to end. It's going to end, right? Because there's a time limit on it.
There will be a winner,
right?
In almost all cases. But you're right. There's something very comforting about that. Even watching the Chiefs lose all those games, dozens and dozens and dozens of games.
Yeah.
Our friend Carlos, who's a super fan, is a Jets fan.
Yeah.
And
same thing.
Oh my God. It's so similar. When Aaron Rodgers, like 4 plays into the first game, was out for the season, this like superstar quarterback, there were all these Instagram videos of Jets fans who were really excited. I mean, they had one of the best players. And there's this great video of a guy just in pure shock. And one guy going, no, he's going to get up. He's going to, just the denial and the shock. And it's just so painful to watch as a Chiefs fan, because I know exactly that feeling.
But that's the drama of it all?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Like, there's still an element that you don't know what's going. It's like improv, almost. It's like an improv show. You have the structure, but once it gets going, you don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. People say, why do you rehearse improv? And I say, well, it's like, think about and I used a sports thing. It's like, it's like the triangle offense for the Bulls,
Yeah.
You have a certain game plan, but if the shot's open, take it,
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that Mandelbaum talks about is that sports stars demonstrate certain idealized traits, or they're supposed to. We expect them to.
Yes, we do.
And that's like some of the things that they demonstrate is like hard work brings success. So they always talk about like, oh, he put the work in at practice.
Yeah, he's a gym rat. He's the first there and the last to leave.
Yeah. And that's kind of something that we as a culture, as a society, think that we can, emulate in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Or
even
other
though
parts
we
of
don't do it, even though none of us do it.
Yeah.
Hell
I can't
no.
wait to get it.
I'm the last one in the first route.
Exactly.
I want to get home and watch a football game.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh God, just get me back on the bench.
I am exhausted.
Yeah. Ooh, Charlie horse. The other thing, they're able to perform under pressure, which is something as we as a culture like to think, like, oh, look at him. He's got 20 seconds left to go.
It is insane putting those young 20-somethings in those positions. It's just so intense.
Just and knowing that if you drop it, everybody in the world is going to be commenting on it and talking about what a failure you were. It's awful. It must be awful.
I have the same experience when I failed, except the only difference is nobody says anything because nobody saw it except for me.
You should still blog about it. You should still get on there like, that sucks. What was he doing? Taking the car in on Saturday morning. The other thing is that they overcome obstacles, which we like, and they always build that up when you're watching the game on TV. Is like, oh well, they had so many players that were down, and
it's the hero's journey. It's overcoming. Yeah.
And these were lessons that probably myths at one time, like you're saying, the hero's journey. Theater at one time probably provided to us.
If you've ever read Iron Man, that's essentially every football game.
Another thing I thought was interesting is Mandelbaum talks about how each of our major sports, baseball, football, and basketball, correspond to a certain age in American development as a nation.
Whoa. What?
So I'm not sure. I mean, sometimes you read things and you're like, I don't know if you're just making a connect. But what is academia?
Let me predict. Let me see if I can figure out.
Okay.
Basketball is for the younger folk. Then you move to football, and then you end up in baseball.
Well, I'm talking about like as a nation. Our development as a nation.
Oh, I see. Jesus. Okay.
So he talks about baseball came around like the mid 1800s.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It kind of corresponds to the agrarian age of our country. So
you go to the park. That makes sense.
And if you look at it, like the season for a baseball game is basically the growing season.
Yes.
for you start in the spring, and then it ends in the fall.
Yeah. Interesting.
And again, it was kind of a slower time there. So he says, and this is before they put in the pitch clock to kind of speed the games up, which I don't know if I.
Well, now they it's clear that America is baseball will always be a part of of our culture, but it's clear that it's waning a little.
Yeah. I mean, the pitch clock, I get it to try to speed the game up, but there was something about if you went for a baseball game, you knew you were going to be there. You didn't know how long you would be there. It was open-ended. You know what I mean?
It doesn't end till it ends.
Yeah. And that they could step off the rubber up on the mound that you could step off.
Yeah.
They could talk as much as they wanted. They could take as much time in between. So he says that was kind of a slower period. So then he goes, football is a game of the Industrial Revolution, meaning like you mentioned already, each player has their own certain role that they're supposed to, their job that they have to do.
Where you fit on the conveyor belt to put the Model T together.
Exactly. We're all working together, but we all have our own jobs, and we all have to run together like a machine to accomplish what we want to do.
Very rehearsed, very organized, very ritualized.
And he says the other thing, it's all about time. Whereas like the baseball game used to be no time limit, the agrarian. The football game is all about managing your time, just like the Industrial Revolution.
I remember at the end of the last Super Bowl, that same young woman that I, accosted when my team started to win was really bummed out that the Chiefs decided to take the ball and sit on it at the end and not score and not give Philly any time to respond. And I'm like, that's the way the game's played. That's part of it. She goes, it's stupid. Like, she was, it was so interesting.
You have to, I think that adds to the tension. You have to manage on top of everything. You got to manage those timeouts.
Yeah.
You got to manage getting out of bounds. You got to manage how much clock is left.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what Mandelbaum is saying. That's all Industrial Revolution. That's a factory.
I buy that.
And then he says, finally, the basketball is the postmodern sport, meaning that, yeah, everybody kind of plays everything. We're all kind of like knowledge experts, like you have like a computer experts or whatever. We all, like, you have 5 guys on a team, right? But they're all, sometimes they're offense, sometimes they're defense. One guy may be shooting, but it doesn't really matter what is, we're all kind of working together.
About flow and hive mind and groupthink and improvisation and that's interesting. That's interesting.
So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. I don't know.
Me too.
It makes sense. I don't know.
It does. It does.
Yeah. And then what Besnier, Brownell, and Carter say also is that sport fuses experiences that are otherwise considered contradictory, such as playfulness and seriousness, leisure and work, individualism and collectivism, hierarchy and equality, and morality and corruption.
Interesting.
And I think that's where you get, it's just a game. Everybody tries to say, like, whenever they talk about, like, oh, it's so much, it's fun, we're being paid to play a game or whatever, but people want to kill each other.
Yes.
over this game. You know what I mean?
People
or at least
have killed each other over it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It stirs up something so deep, us versus them, like in politics, you see it in politics, especially now. It's just this tribalism, it's deep, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always find it, because you've mentioned like the hooliganism in Europe, which is really bad.
Yeah.
Where it's very organized, like big groups of people fighting each other.
Yeah.
But you're starting to see a lot more fighting at football games here.
Yep. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. If you go to a visitor's game and wear, somebody else's home game and you're wearing your team's shirt, chances are something, I remember being at a Chargers game. I think it was with you.
Yeah.
And somebody threw ketchup packets at us.
Yeah, they were all through. I thought we were going to get in a fight in that game when we were leaving, honestly.
Yeah, but they didn't know. We had you as our secret weapon.
The other one, Carlos and I, our friend Carlos, who's a Jets fan, invited me to go down to see the Jets play the Chargers one time when they were in San Diego. And Carlos and I, we were just shocked. There were so many fights. Many fights in this. And so finally, after the game, we were like, well, let's just go over to Starbucks. There's a Starbucks near the state. Let's just go over there and get a coffee and wait for the crowd to die down.
Smart.
And we went over there, and a fight broke out at the Starbucks.
Wow. there were guys between like Jets fans and Chargers fans, or just drunken?
Just drunken. We came out of the Starbucks, and the guy next to us got cold cocked by another guy.
Holy crap!
Yeah,
just for no reason.
Maybe there was a reason, but Carlos and I, we were just, you got that cool jazz playing at a Starbucks. You don't expect to see like a Donnybrook at a at a Starbucks. There's hot coffee around there, but they were fighting at the Starbucks. Yeah,
Jesus.
And again, it's like you reach a point, I think, as a fan where the team begins to represent you, like we were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they get your pride going or something. And you don't want to see that guy dissing your team at the stadium or something.
Yeah. It hurts. It gets really personal. And if you're someone who you deal with feelings physically. Yeah.
Yeah. But also, there's tons of alcohol involved in it. I don't know how people get, maybe because it's so expensive to get drunk at the stadium. You have to like down a 12-pack out in the parking lot before you go in to save money,
Yeah, you can't even sneak flasks in anymore. They search you and you go through metal detectors and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody's just
back in my day, people would come in with the baseball hats with the 2 beers on either side,
Yeah. Those were the times. I mean, you and I we wore kilts to a game one time.
I sure do. Yeah, I went with you and your brothers. You guys all wore kilts to the Raiders game, Chiefs Raiders at Arrowhead in the winter.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was cold. That people say,
Yeah.
the kilts are actually keep you warm. That's not
Yeah.
true. That's not true.
Well, they do for a while,
Turns
but I think
turns
also
out
it's
pants are better than kilts.
my brother Steve. The thing is, you got to be drinking scotch the whole
Yeah.
time.
Well,
Like that's how
then
it
you can
is.
be nude. Yeah. But you and I were stone cold sober. Oh
Yeah.
my
Oh,
God, it was cold. Jesus. Well, how cold do you think it was?
it was. We were up high too because remember my
Yeah.
brother's seats were way up high, and it just that wind whipping around and on
Oh,
those
I was
cold
miserable.
plastic seats.
Oh, it had to be in the teens, don't you think? It
Yeah.
was cold.
Yeah. Yeah. It got
Whoa.
down.
Oh,
We were drinking O'Doul's.
yeah.
Drinking O'Doul's.
I was
Doesn't
praying
keep you-
for death. I was just praying for death. I wanted the Chiefs to win and me to die.
Yeah, yeah. Just so you could see it and then be like, ugh.
Not
Like,
bad. Not bad. I'd take that. I'll take that.
In his book, The Soccer Tribe, the anthropologist Desmond Morris talks about the tribal origins of soccer. And I don't know if I actually agree with this one, but he talks about it's kind of the same argument that people made when we were talking about the paleo diet. And he talks about at one time, our ancestors were hunters and gatherers, and we had to be more athletic and intelligent. And then he says we had to work as a team, we had to cooperate and devise tactics and set traps, which sounds a lot like team sports. And then he says when 10,000 years ago, when we created farming and agriculture, then we didn't have that anymore. And so and again, to me, it's like the same argument with paleo diet in that his idea is that we're still culturally, we still want to be those hunters who are out there like working together, chasing the prey. And that's the reason why we love sports so much.
Well, I think, as I was saying earlier, there's something about our love for sports that is deep reptilian brain stuff.
Yeah.
So, and you do have to volunteer. You do have to collaborate and work together to take down a woolly mammoth or one of those big sloths.
Yeah.
Those things, the ones that were the size of a car.
Yeah. Yeah, very slow, but the size of a car.
Very slow, but Jesus.
But I think, he kind of makes this, again, he's like looking at from an anthropological standpoint of the tribalism, which you've mentioned before.
Yeah.
And there's some things that he talks about, which is like the soccer game, for example, is a ritual hunt or a stylized battle between two tribes. Like the two teams are tribes.
Yeah.
He also sees the soccer match as a religious ceremony where the field and the stadium are revered and people are joined by a common belief.
Yes. I think that's absolutely true. When you go, the Super Bowl game that we went to was between the New Orleans Saints and the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah.
And we hated the Colts, you and I, because they had destroyed the Chiefs. They were in the same conference. And they had, and so we were rooting for New Orleans, and to see the difference in the fan base, the Indianapolis fans all wore jeans and sweaters with their sweaters tucked in. They were really kind of uptight, all white. And the New Orleans fans were like as diverse as you can imagine. No rhyme or reason, pure chaos, crazy outfits, Mardi Gras. It was amazing.
Yeah. Remember, we walked around the stadium and you could feel it. Like you went from Indianapolis side very quiet before the game.
Yeah.
And then you get over to the New Orleans side. It was already a party going on.
Oh, yeah. It was a party from that morning on.
He also talks about it's a tribe. The game day is like a tribal gathering where all the people, they put on their regalia.
Yes.
Everybody dresses up in their, like if you look at it, everybody's putting on like their best, like the superstitious, you put on your religion, like the ceremonial garb for the game,
Concerts can be like that too, like the Grateful Dead, when everybody knew, and everybody was in on it. It was very friendly. I mean, there were people outliers, but for the most part, it's this communal, deeply communal feeling. And then you mix in, hallucinogens, and boy, then things really take off.
And then Morris, he also talks about, he divides up the fans, and he's talking about soccer fans, but I think it also works for football fans in this country. He talks about the old supporters, that, the people who have devoted their whole lives to the team,
like you and me.
Like our team never loses, but occasionally they run out of time, was like this statement that he says, like you're always perennially thinking that, they're always, the team can do no wrong.
Right. Right. Okay.
And then he talks about the experts who know everything, where those are the guys who are always saying, like, well, what they need to do is they need to get a new cornerback who does this, or they need to run the, then there's the jokers who always yell out like caustic comments about like, you were that way. Remember, you were like antagonizing the Chargers fans.
Yes, I was the reason we got attacked. Because it was Priest Holmes who was our quarterback, and I kept making the cross, and God, that was fun.
You were driving them crazy. You were driving them crazy
because I was funny too. They didn't quite know how to take it.
Yeah, they wanted to kill you, but they were laughing when they were doing it.
Well, they thought it was funny, and then it just reached a point where they're like, "We're gonna kill you, you motherfucker."
Ketchup just raining down on us from like the upper deck. Remember, it was
like,
then he talks about the barrackers, who are the loud shouts of anger, just people who are just really mad at the game.
That's my dad. That's my dad. God damn it. Two things my dad hated: the Chiefs losing and the Kansas wind. He hated the wind. Goddamn fucking wind.
That's a hard one to get over. I mean,
well, they're both unmovable forces.
He was so mad at the wind.
He hated it because he would try to seed the lawn and it would blow the seed away, and he just hated that wind.
He also talks about the martyrs, and the martyrs never shout, but moan and shake their heads.
I can relate. I'm all of these people. I think I'm all of them.
Me too. And then he talks about the outsiders, who are like, you ever go to the game and there's somebody down there who you just can't figure out why they're there. Like, they're not cheering for either team. They're just sitting there watching it,
trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So again, it's tribalism is what Morris is saying. It's we have the fanfare, we have the regalia, we have the clapping, we have the chants. When everybody does the same chants together.
Every football team has a chant,
right?
What's the stupidest chant you think in the NFL?
I don't know. I would say we're going to talk about the Chiefs soon, but
I think so. Although the skull in Minnesota is pretty dumb. Or they just
is that what? Yeah.
They just clap over their heads rhythmically.
But it's something about you. By doing it, you get 80,000 people doing the same. And I hate to say it because that's probably what happened in Germany back in the 30s.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it tapped into the same communal.
Yeah.
Being a part of is a powerful thing. It's powerful.
Yeah. And when you're there, like, that energy, like, takes control of you. Like, when you have
everybody's a friend.
People,
you're friends with everybody. We're all on the same team.
Yeah. I always found that interesting whenever the Bulls would win in Chicago, and walking home from a bar that night after they had won, like, everybody's clapping. You would never go up and hug a stranger in Chicago at any time, but when the Bulls won the championship, you could do that.
Yeah, that time with Jordan was a magical time. And we were in Chicago and the 85 Bears when they won that. Yeah. And Chicago's one of those cities that sports is just core. It's the opposite of LA.
Yeah. One last thing that Morris talks about is the souvenirs
these are like totems, right? These are
yeah.
You know what's weird? The weirdest souvenir is that those little bats that they sell at baseball games. Those little wooden bats.
Yeah.
I remember my dad bought us those, and we just immediately started hitting each other with them.
Yeah.
It's like the worst thing to give to a little boy.
Yeah. You know, the other thing, people always keep those in their car, like, in case I get in a fight, I'm going to get that bat. It's like, that little bat's not going to do anything. Your souvenir bat, you know. Pull that out and come out. All right, come on.
Come on, motherfucker. Oh, my God.
Okay, John. So, as we've said, you and I are both Chiefs fans, and I think we have to talk about
here we go.
The elephant in the room, which is offensive or racist mascots.
Yes, we do.
And of course, you know, there were mascots like the Cleveland Indians and the Washington Redskins.
Yes,
but they both changed their name already.
Yes.
You know?
and I'm all for the Chiefs changing their name, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. You know, change it to the Arrowheads or whatever. I don't care. Whatever it is. But isn't there like tribes in the Kansas City area who I know there's there's many voices.
Right. And I don't think you can, I mean, the Native American community is not monolithic. Like not all Native Americans think exactly the same way.
Right.
But you know, it's obviously the Chiefs. Remember how they used to always say, well, it's named after, Harold Roe Bartle, who was the mayor back when the Chiefs first came. And everybody called him Chief. So that's the reason why we called him. So for a long time, I was like, well, maybe they called him, you know, like chief of police, or like, you know, like you call your boss like chief or something like that. And come to find out, they called him Chief because he was called Chief Lone Wolf or Lone Bear, Chief Lone Bear in his Boy Scout troop.
Really?
So yeah. So he was called Chief. That was his nickname, but he was again pretending to be a Native American, and that's how he got it.
Wow.
And then also, you know, they picked up the chant from they have the chant, and then they have the tomahawk chop.
Right.
And I don't remember growing up. I don't know where the tomahawk chop came along.
Neither.
I think that came along in the 90s, because I don't remember doing that.
Me neither.
Back in the 70s.
But I do remember the chief riding around on war paint on the horse. I remember that.
They did other offensive things. Like, we have a horse called War Paint. Running around. That was.
Yep. Now they have. What's the thing they have now? What is that thing? Is it a wolf?
It's a wolf. It's like the Wolf Pack.
Oh.
So it's Casey Wolf or something.
Yeah, let's change this to the Wolves.
Yeah. I think they're heading in that direction. I think when they start talking about the kingdom, you know, the Chiefs kingdom, and like the wolf, I think they're kind of like heading that direction. But
I'm all for it.
It's the other thing they always say is, the Chiefs the organization tries to involve the local Native American tribes in the organization or in the Chiefs experience. And then they always say, well, we go out and we do outreach to try to help health in the Native American community around Kansas City. We send players out there to talk about leading a healthy lifestyle. And I'm like, look, you could still do all that no matter what the name of your team is.
That's right. That's
you
right.
know what I mean? You don't have to do that because you're named whatever. You can still do that. That's still a good thing to do no matter what. But you know, I wanted to look at why, because I'll be honest, I've done in the past, I've done the chant, I've done the tomahawk chop before I knew it, before I had talked to anybody, before I'd done any studying, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's one thing if you don't know any better to do something, but once you someone said something to you like, hey, you know, that's kind of offensive to me, or like when you've kind of read up on it and you keep doing it, at that point, it's not, you don't get a pass on that anymore. Right. You're just kind of an asshole at that point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you don't care.
Right. And so I was looking at why are Native American mascots so troublesome for some people, like for Native Americans. And in the article "Race, Colonialism, and the Politics of Indian Sports Names and Mascots," Kevin Bruyneel notes that studies have shown that the use of Indian team names and mascots has a clear negative social and psychological impact on Indigenous people, especially young people.
It makes total sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes total sense. Yeah.
And then Bruyneel goes in and he says, well, people get confused because most people see the use of Native American mascots as being a question of race or racism. And he says it's really an issue of settler colonialism. So what do we mean by settler colonialism? And settler colonialism was an idea that came about in the 1990s, and it was first put out by the Australian historian Patrick Wolfe. And settler colonialism is a specific type of colonialism where settlers come to stay, the colonizers come to stay in an area permanently.
Right. They take the land.
Right. So in other words, unlike basic colonialism, which can be awful as well, where you come just to take the economic resources of an area and maybe exploit the cheap labor of an area, settler colonialism is all about the colonizers want to take not only the land, but they want to remove the indigenous people from the land. Mm-hmm. And also they want to suppress their culture, the indigenous culture. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the reason they do that is they want to legitimize the reason they control the land. Mm-hmm. So in other words, you remove the people, you suppress the culture, and then you say, well, we've always been here, when in fact you haven't always been here.
Right. And and you diminish what the culture that's already there, right, so that and your culture can take over, your God can take over, your religion, all of it.
Yeah. And usually the way that this has been done historically has been through violence, through like military action or genocide, or you actually forcibly you take people away from their homes and make them force them to assimilate, go to schools. They can't practice their own religion, their own language. And so what Bruyneel says is that the use of Native American mascots is a mnemonic device that disavows the dispossession of indigenous territory and the violent and aggressive assimilatory practices against indigenous people.
So he's saying because we name as a way of making ourselves feel better about taking everything.
Right, exactly. So you put these names, and it's not only with team names, but it's also like if, like geological features or mountains or streams or something, we'll name them after Native Americans.
Or streets. Lots of streets are named. I went to Pawnee Elementary School.
I went to Comanche Elementary. That was the thing that they did in Kansas City. Back in the 60s and 70s, or probably even 50s, you would name all your schools were named after Native American tribes. Remember?
Yes.
And so it gives you this idea, if you're part of the colonizer or part of the predominant culture, it gives you this idea that Native Americans are still there. They're still around.
Right.
Even though you've actually pushed them.
Displaced them.
Right. Completely out of the community. So we're saying with the Native American mascots, we're actually saying, well, the other argument people try to make is like, well, we're actually honoring them. We're honoring Native Americans by naming our, and that's one argument they make. The other argument that the Washington Redskins always tried to say was, well, it's part of our tradition. The team name has been around for 81 years, therefore we can't change it because it's become a tradition.
Right.
For our fans. And it's like, well, how does that make people feel who had been here for 10,000 years or something? You know what I mean? And have been forced off their land, and you're trying to talk about a tradition for your team.
Yes. For there's no question. The fact that the team, the Redskins, was around for as long as it was, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So again, it's the argument kind of being we've forced Native Americans, or with if you look at the settler colonialism, Native Americans were removed from their lands. We forcibly removed them from their lands. We drove them almost to, their numbers almost to extinction, really.
And then we named our cul-de-sac and elementary schools after them.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the final fuck you.
Yeah, like we're honoring you. We're going to pretend like you're still there, even though you're not there. And so I think if I can look at, to me, I could see how that would be offensive. And even if, one of the things people always say, well, that's not racist. I'm not a racist. It's just the name of the team or what. That's not really about racism, because racism is usually, you condescend to someone to give yourself to denigrate them or to give yourself a sense of superiority. And this is kind of more like you've removed people and then try to pretend like they're still there, even though you're not allowing them to participate in the rest of the culture.
Yeah,
so
rewriting reality.
Right. And so I get it. I can I'm
all for it. I say change the name.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I'd be fine with it, honestly. I don't have any. I'm like, anytime anybody says, well, how can you root for a team named the Chiefs? I'm like, change the name. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I watched that team because my dad did growing up, and that's all it is. It's, I don't want it. It kind of ruins it a little bit now, older, like you said, knowing that the name is offensive. I want it changed so that I can just go on enjoying the game,
Yeah. And honestly, remember when they came to Kansas, they started out as the Houston or as the Dallas Texans.
Yeah.
Before they came to Kansas City.
That's right. That's right. And
so
and all football teams change their names all the time. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I guess it taps into that tribalism, and people are like, no, that's mine.
Yeah.
So it's hard on them.
I've been following them since like 65. It's like, look, dude, it's just a name. I would love them if they were the Turd Balls. You know what I mean? I don't care what the name is.
Yep.
I would still love the team.
Me too.
And there was a time, remember when all the Kansas City, talk about tradition, all the Kansas City teams at one time used to it was like monarchy or something.
Yes.
Like you had the Royals, you had the Kings.
Yep.
You had the Monarchs, who were the black team back when baseball was segregated.
What was the hockey team? It had a name too. I can't remember.
They were the Blues for a while. I think the Blues went somewhere else, but
they went to St. Louis.
I really like that idea. Like maybe that's I don't know what the name is, but I don't care. The name doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
Really. And I'll still buy all the new shit that they come out with.
Yeah. I'll wear it.
Yeah. All right, John.
Well, we started just light and us going to a Super Bowl together, and we end in erasing cultures. Damn, what a journey. I've loved this. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
It's my pleasure.
It really is fascinating. So this is human number 2 signing off.
And this is human number 1. And thank you again, everyone, for listening. And again, if you have a topic that you would like us to address, or if you have anything that you think that humanity needs to know about, please let us know, and we will try to do an episode on it. But thank you again, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate it. John, thank you.
Thank you. Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs. We'll see you at the Super Bowl. Talk to you later.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.